and good evening to all you wonderful people. Indeed, we are all here to heal the world, isn't it? Welcome to the RISE Summit 2022, the ninth of its kind and only the second to be held in an online version. Today, we welcome over 2,000 delegates from 40 plus countries and numerous time zones the world over, all united in a common endeavor to find solutions to the issues facing our world. My name is Naresh Karmarkar, and I'm your host for this morning's opening plenary. The RISE World Summit is a unique platform for thought leaders, experts, and visionary partners to influence outcomes and actions for the Sustainable Development Goals for the year ahead and beyond. The first 7 editions of RISE were held in the physical space over 2 days in Mumbai, later extending to another day in Pune, besides field visits. The coronavirus pandemic, of course, threw a curveball at all of us in 2020, just a little after our 7th RISE Summit, and there was a doubt whether RISE 2021 would happen at all. But just like the rest of the world, we refused to be cowed down, and unintended, we rose to the occasion. With all of your support, we went online with a vengeance and not only delivered a summit we were expected to deliver, but one that exceeded our own expectations. RISE World Summit 2021 was held with 36 hours relay programming across 8 time zones and 1,000 plus participants from 55 countries, led by 65 visionary partners and thought leaders, such as Professor Philip Kotler, Cherie Blair, Amitabh Kant, Ambassador Gideon Behar, Dr. Yasmin Ali Haque, Professor K. VijayRaghavan, Cheryl Pinto, Yosef Abramowitz, and more. We now look forward to building on the momentum and influence further outcomes as RISE World Summit 2022. The 2022 edition of RISE, as you know, will be held from today, 3rd February, through Saturday, 5th February 2022, on the theme Innovation and Diversity. Time to change from diversity and inclusiveness, that is IND, from DNI to innovation and diversity, that's IND, literally appending the diversity, compliance, and checklist mindset into becoming a driver of sustainable excellence, growth, and innovation. The RISE World Summit is unique in that it has a pure, interactive, and outcome-focused program with no panels and no presentations, and is instead co-created and co-located with partners and experts. The program covers the spectrum of women's, social, and green issues with the 3 formats: forum, fest, and tours, including roundtables, workshops, chat tables, film festival, awards, tours, innovation showcase, resource rooms, storytelling, surveys, and contests, and more. And now, it is my utmost pleasure to invite none other than the Chief Impact Officer, IDOBRO, and the RISE Infinity Foundation, and the convener of the RISE Summit 2022, Ms. Karan Shaiva, to take the stage and deliver the welcome address. Please put your hands together for Karan. She's really been the driving force of the movement right from the first edition itself. Karan, it's all yours.
Thank you, Naresh. And I really mean that, because it's just not about today, but about 8 years and now our 9th year together doing this. So thank you very much once again. RISE, first and foremost, I guess I should say, welcome to the RISE World Summit, the 9th edition. I cannot believe it. Next year is going to be our 10th. And it's truly, truly not just a privilege, but truly an opportunity for us to demonstrate something so very unique. RISE is not just a verb for us. It is the pillar of our value system that guides every single thing that we do. Each of the values, responsible, inclusive, sustainable, eco-friendly, ecosystem-friendly, reflects everything we believe in, everything we wish for, in everything that we do. And therefore, for us, as I said, it goes far beyond the verb. I am often asked 2 questions. Why do we do this? Well, I am not going to answer that this year, because that's an answer I would like to keep for my next year, our 10th year. And I certainly hope that each one of you are going to join us next year as well. See, this is how we have so much confidence that we're going to have you keep coming back. And that's really what happens every year. The second question I am definitely going to answer, and that is, why do people come to RISE? What is it that makes them come year after year as and when they please? Many of our RISE people already know about the opening plenary and what we do over here, because they've seen this every year. This is a format we don't change. With the release of the RISE values that we will see happening over here. But they definitely come right through these 3 days that we are going to be over here. We have over 2,400, I think we've crossed 2,500 now. Over 2,500 people from close to 50 countries that have registered for this. And there must be something we're doing right for that to happen. I think it is best encapsulated by Professor Philip Kotler, just one of the most incredible people that I've had the opportunity to meet because of the RISE World Summit, who said last year, people power at its best. And I think that's the first reason that the RISE PECO community members keep coming back. This is their event. This is not about iDobro. This is not about RISE Infinity Foundation. This is about them. And I think it literally is co-owned, not just co-created. You know, it is easy to co-create with a lot of people because everybody likes to give in their ideas and come and do things, but goes even beyond co-creation. It is co-owned by every partner, co-owned by every expert, co-owned by every single person that is helping us make this happen. Straight away from our steering council members, our core committee members, our board members, and of course the iDobro team. And I think that's the single most, if it is not that, I don't think we would be able to create an event like this with no sponsors, as you would have seen. It is truly the people power that makes us happen. The second reason I think people come to the RISE World Summit is because of its format. With no panels and no presentations, I doubt I know of another like this. And this again is because of the people. It gives them a voice. It gives them an opportunity to democratize the opportunities and partnerships that are there out there. And third, and maybe not the least at all, is truly the way in which we ensure that this is not just an event, but something that continues relationships, knowledge, experience, projects. It is all something that we not just take back with, but build upon right through the year. And I think that is what keeps us together year round and year after year. With that, I will stop because I do want us to get started with the amazing people that I continue to meet because of the RISE World Summit every single year. And I can't wait to hear them once again at this inaugural plenary of ours. And with that, may I once again invite each and every one of you and wish you the most amazing experience like no other at any conference you may have visited or will visit in the future. And I hope you will not take that as a challenge, but truly join us in the celebration of the RISE PECOworld community and the World Summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran. You're absolutely right. RISE is not just an event. In fact, it's an abiding emotion. This is what I would like to say. And ladies and gentlemen, we now come to a very special part of the summit where the RISE values will be released by a stellar representative of each key stakeholder group we believe is necessary to solve the problems the world faces. The RISE values are responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and eco-friendly, and serve to drive people and organizations to positive action for a better world and a greener planet, the best shared value we can create. Together, we multiply impact. We have four eminent leaders amidst us today, each of whom literally embodies the value that they will release. Going straight to the R value, the first value, our first leader who will release the R value is an iconic lady, at once known for a fearlessness as for a sense of justice and fair play, matched only by a zeal to impact change. To introduce our first dignitary, the one and only Dr. Kiran Vedi, may I invite our RISE Steering Council member, Group Executive President and Business Head of Aditya Birla Group, Mr. Dev Bhattacharya, to take the stage. Mr. Bhattacharya looks after new businesses, including renewables, and sits on several boards of the group. Dev, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Naresh. Thank you very much. I take great pleasure in introducing Dr. Kiran Vedi. Dr. Kiran Vedi needs no introduction, as people would say, but I personally wouldn't want to miss the opportunity. She's friend and family and an absolute icon for women in this country. Kiran is an Asian tennis champion. Now, this is something that many of you probably didn't know, but that's only one part of her multifaceted personality. She's the first woman IPS officer of the country, which everybody knows. And she has inspired countless women to join the police thereafter. She was the 24th Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry and also served as a civilian police advisor in the United Nations peacekeeping operations. This is also perhaps a facet many of you don't know. She is a PhD from IIT Delhi with a postdoctoral Nehru Fellowship. She is the author of several books, and the latest is Fearless Governance. This is based on the ground realities of what she saw serving as Lieutenant Governor. I strongly urge all of you to get a copy on Amazon at the earliest you can. I've ordered mine. She has won many accolades and awards in her career. The Gallantry Award, the Magsaysay Award, and she has in fact a biopic on her life called Yes, Madam, Sir, made by an Australian. It's really worth watching, and I hope you get the opportunity to look at it. She's founded two foundations, Navjyoti and India Vision Foundation, which have served the underprivileged in rural urban areas and prisons for the last 30 years. And as Naresh said, she's fearless. She speaks her mind and does what she says. She's not afraid to stand up to what's patently wrong. And she walks into unruly crowds and quells them. She stands up to politicians if she thinks that she needs to do that. And she stands up for the downtrodden, the underprivileged, and never hesitates to assert their rights and help them solve the problems. And this is the kind of person that she has been all through her life: honest, transparent, and forthright. So over to you, Kiran. People are waiting to hear from you.
I'm so grateful to you, Dev. Yes, you're right in introducing me, that I'm both a family and a friend. And the second woman of the Indian Police Service was none other than your wife, Kanchan Chaudhary. She was Kanchan Chaudhary, my cousin, and became Kanchan Bhattacharya. And she was also the first Director General of Police in India of any state, which you did not mention. So it's my duty to do that. So we are both a family and a friend. And something which you don't know, I will tell you, that Kanchan, your wife, unfortunately who's no more, she wrote the IPS on my coaxing. I made her write the IPS as her first preference so that I have a cousin in the Indian Police Service. I miss her today, but I'm so happy to be introduced to you, by none other than a family and a friend. I want to thank Karen Shever for giving me this rare opportunity of addressing this great conference. Let me say, I'm pleased to release the RISE value, and I will focus on responsible. Inspired by what Dev Bhattacharya has, the manner in which he's introduced me, and he's asked you to refer to my Fearless Governance book. I don't know, I'm changing my mind right now to share with you what my current thoughts are. I also wish to recognize, before I say anything further, is our very eminent panelist, Jalpa Ratna, Elizabeth Vasquez, and Ravina Raj Kohli, who I really look forward to listening to be inspired from this World Summit. I had collected my thoughts on what responsible behavior is, and responsibility is, by very, very wise thoughts. But I thought I'm changing my mind right now to present to you what happened with my heightened sense of responsibility as Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry in India. And that's what this book is all about. It's almost a model for public servants and public service in India, and even private sector and public sector leadership. When Indira Nooyi released my book, I was very, very honored and privileged that she and Debashish Chatterjee, the IMM director of Kozhikode, they both jointly released my book. And Indira said that this book cuts across private and public sector leadership. Let me share with you a little case study in the time frame given to me by Karen, and reveal to you how important it is for public servants to exercise fullest responsibility, be it the elected representatives or be it the appointed representatives, or be it in private sector leadership, with performance with purpose, as Indira Nooyi rightly said. If you all get into performance with purpose, I think the world will be a totally different place to live in. There will be no have-nots. There will only be haves when there is performance with purpose, whether it's a public official or whether it's a private sector leadership. And the case study which I'm sharing with you is when I took the oath as the 24th Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry, I did not just did the technical oath. That was the ritual. The ritual was you say, I abide by the Indian Constitution and uphold the integrity and sovereignty of this country. I said, I will follow this oath with a mission statement. And that was the concept called T. I said the T means trust, empowerment, and accountability. That's my last word. Accountability is another other side of the coin of responsible behavior. And when I gave the T mantra to the people in my opening speech, it was said to me ritually, ma'am, it's always the oath. You don't speak after that. I said, no, I shall let people of Puducherry and the public officials of Puducherry know what am I here for. I'm not here to live in a beautiful palace, a former French territory of Puducherry, most beautiful palace to live in at Raj Nivas. I declared what am I here for. And I said, I'm going to be trustworthy. I'm here to empower you, and I'm here for my accountability. I raised my accountability in the opening statement when I addressed responsible behavior as a Lieutenant Governor of that Union Territory. From responsible behavior, I did unconventional things of responsible expression. And the key was I opened my closed institution of a palace called Raj Nivas, or the residential office of the Lieutenant Governor, to people's grievances. And I kept aside a fixed time for them to come and be with me and tell me anything they want, anything. From 4 to 7 every day, from the second day of my Lieutenant Governorship, Raj Nivas became a people Nivas. Anybody could walk in by a token system on first come, first serve, were heard, anything. Do you know what happened? It started to percolate accountability and responsibility into the rank and file. But third thing, what happened? It increased a lot of hostility from those who were who were irresponsible. Those elected representatives or public servants who were not exercising this accountability, visibility, and accessibility suddenly became uncomfortable. And you had a raised hostility. And for 5 long years, I had to go through a fearless governance because it was one exercise of responsibility. On the other hand, there was a whole vested interest of being against responsibility behavior, but personal vested interest to be expressed, but not a responsible behavior. Now, responsible behavior meant as a public servant or as a public official, or you can call him as an administrator, was opening up my system, make myself more accountable. Second, I reach out. Don't people come to me? No, as a public servant, as a responsible person, I go to see the problem, not only ask for paper reports but go and see the problem, which meant every Saturday, Sunday, as a lieutenant governor, I used to sometimes cycle. I used to bike. And as a team, we cycled around the city. By cycling around the city, I further raised everybody's responsible or collaborative partnership. When I'm biking, as a lieutenant governor, as a team leader, sometimes with National Cadet Corps students, sometimes with beat officers, sometimes with my own public officials, going to the spot where it needs to be seen, not just keep getting reported. It made all the world of a difference in collaborative participation. Never had they seen a lieutenant governor out of a Mercedes car on a cycle to be with a common citizen. Third, what I did was gratitude, where I did whatever gifts I got were not mine as a lieutenant governor. They were meant people to people. So I used to carry all the gifts which I was receiving, particularly the shawls. In Tamil Nadu, you get very good introductory shawls. I used to gift away the shawls to the sanitary workers, turn by turn, stopping my cycle and giving them the shawls because it is because of them. There were many, many things, and I would urge you, yes, it's worth it. Fearless governance royalties have all been donated to causes which I espouse. I have two major foundations called Navjyoti India Foundation and India Vision Foundation, which reaches out to have-nots in the prisons, in rural areas, in urban areas, and they're both 30 years old, and the project of Magsaysay Award, which I dedicated, the award dedicated to these foundations. So therefore, I'm not here to promote my book. I'm here to share public sense of responsibility with the measures have been stated very clearly that if political masters, political leaders, public officials, appointed or nominated, whoever they be, if they become more visible, they become express accountability, they match their word with deed, and that they are giving rather than taking, the way I used to give away all my gifts. I tell you, this world will be a different place to live in. Let me conclude by saying what I read in the newspaper this morning by a spiritual quote, and it's from Swami Paramahansa Yoganandaji. It is from this Morning Times of India. Karen, when I was preparing my thoughts for your event, and this is what it is. It says, secret law. Those who seek prosperity for themselves alone are in the end bound to become poor or to suffer from mental inharmony. But those who consider the whole world as their home and care and work for group or world prosperity find the individual prosperity that is legitimately theirs. This is the secret of law. Finally, I thought this would be a very good spiritual recall, saying life is the acceptance of responsibilities or their evasion. It is a business of meeting obligations or avoiding them. To every man, the choice is continually being offered, but by the manner of his choosing, you may fairly measure him. This is said by Ben Ames Williams. With this, I rest my case. I think there's a message of responsibility, responsible political behavior, responsible public interest behavior, responsible journalistic behavior, responsible private sector behavior, responsible behavior as citizens. And I would say, begin with children, begin with the youth. Once you begin with the youth, you have sown a whole generation of youth, generations of responsible behavior. Let's give our children both roots and wings, roots of responsible behavior and wings of freedom and independence. Thank you, Karen, once again. Thank you, Dev. Thank you, Nareshji, for giving me this rare opportunity to be heard and to share. Thank you once again.
Our second leader for the morning is another dynamic individual who has gained experience across the world working with several organizations on a spectrum of humanitarian issues. To introduce our dignitary, Ms. Jalpa Ratna, who will release the inclusive value, may I invite Steering Council member, Mr. N. Vinod Chandra Menon. Mr. Menon is a founder member of the National Disaster Management Authority, Government of India, as also the Regional Director, Asia, of the International Emergency Management Society, TIEMS, based in Oslo. Over to you, Mr. Menon.
Thank you very much, Naresh. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Jalpa Ratna. After listening to Dr. Kiran Vedi talking about responsible behavior, now we've come to inclusive as a second value. And Jalpa Ratna actually is the Chief of the Field Services in UNICEF India Country Office. And before which she was actually in the UNICEF headquarters as a senior advisor for the Syria crisis. And she actually has worked in many of the humanitarian hotspots in the world. In Afghanistan, in South Sudan, in Tajikistan, and in Pakistan. And we've also seen that the work which she has done has covered many countries, including Sri Lanka and Kosovo. So we actually have somebody like Jalpa Ratna introducing inclusion, and being inclusive is also following responsible behavior. Inclusion is actually not just social inclusion, economic inclusion or financial inclusion, also electoral inclusion and digital inclusion. And now, as in this current COVID crisis, we find that inclusive behavior is very much needed because it's a widening inequality which we're seeing around us. And we feel that inclusive behavior is very important. And especially when we are seeing so much of exclusion, vulnerable sections need to be brought in. And Jalpa actually has experience working with UNICEF, before which she has also worked with Oxfam, Mercy Corps, and IOM. And I think with all her experience working in multiple hotspots in the humanitarian work and also in EMOPS in UNICEF headquarters as a humanitarian practitioner, we look forward to listening to you, Jalpa. Very great pleasure welcoming you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm happy to release the RISE value of inclusion. And very difficult to go on the speech after Kiran Vedi, who set it up very well and actually talked about the crux of the importance of inclusion and collaborative participation. So thank you for setting me up. I'd like to say hello from a very rainy Delhi. And also a great honor to address the RISE World Summit today. So thank you, Karen Sheva. And of course, Kiran Vedi, great inspiration, Elizabeth Vasquez, and Ravina Raj Kohli. So when I was asked to speak today, I thought of one of our global elders who we lost at the end of the year, last year, Desmond Tutu. And much of his work was on diversity and inclusion. And there's a quote he says is, which I thought would set us up nicely to thinking about inclusion is, your ordinary acts of love and hope point to the extraordinary promise that every human life is of inestimable value. That every human life is of estimable value. And actually, this sums this up for me through my humanitarian work, but my work with UNICEF, but all the other organizations. And as we talk about the SDGs and we talk about inclusion, for me, this really starts from us as individuals. What are we bringing to the table? What are our perspectives? And that essentially impacts how we work and how we unfold things and our ideas. And I think this community that is being built through the RISE Summit really embodies that and opens up this discussion and opens up the participation. So again, thank you for that. I believe the COVID-19 pandemic, as was just mentioned, and the unfolding climate emergency have brought us to some unprecedented crossroads, and especially when we talk about inclusion. So what health crisis quickly became an all-human crisis. And while it continues and has really impacted our progress towards the SDGs, it also threatens to undo achievements towards social inclusion. We see countries closing down. We see fear. We see other reactions from across the globe. And I think some of us hoped, and in times of crisis, it can also become a leveler. It can also bring people together. And I think that's also happened. People have come together. People have started seeing where the most marginalized. It's also been very clear that though the pandemic affected everyone, that it is still the most marginalized. It is still the most marginalized communities that are being affected the most. And I think, I hope that this has helped us all revisit the development agenda and highlighting who are we missing when we're looking at fulfilling the SDGs. And that's really what I want to talk about today. So across the globe, what we've seen is people with disabilities, women, unemployed, minorities, people are outside the formal systems. And certainly across our work with UNICEF, we've seen this. For women, this has been unprecedented. We've seen increasing rates of domestic violence. I will conclude my inclusion piece, just focus on three things that I wanted to say today. One is the importance of education. So for UNICEF, we estimated that about 616 million students globally remain affected by partial school closures due to the pandemic. And I think that's critical as we move forward in these discussions over the next few days. This is a massive impact on children, on their futures, and our collective future, and a huge impact on the SDGs, and also on mental health, the risk of abuse, etc. So really, that's a big thought that I wanted to put across. The other piece really is around climate change-induced disasters that further endanger vulnerable communities. So when we talk about inclusion, we also need to talk about how we're going to address these crises and reduce the risks, and who are they impacting the most. So these are the questions I think for a community will be important. And linked to this question, and very much close to my heart, is how do we measure change? The need for strong national evaluation systems to deliver the SDGs. As these systems also help demonstrate what solutions work and what can be done better to ensure no one is left behind. Can we also think about innovations that establish monitoring and evaluation systems that look at who is being missed? And I think in the work that I've done, this has been the most critical question. If we start looking at who's being missed, we start broadening who we're including in the discussion. We start broadening our participation. We start asking critical questions to our own thinking and our mindsets. How do we plan, how we finance, how we implement policy and programs are all impacted by the question, who are we missing? So with that, I thank everyone here engaged in this conversation and trying to find solutions. And I hope we can all build back better, really with inclusion at the forefront of our minds.
So now we move on to our third RISE value, which is S for sustainable. And to do the honors, we have yet another dynamic lady who combines stellar academic credentials with a missionary zeal for the economic empowerment of women, and is undoubtedly a world leader in the field. Joining us today from Washington, D.C. at what is obviously a very unearthly hour for her, we have none other than Ms. Elizabeth Vasquez. To introduce Ms. Vasquez, may I call upon a steering council member, Mr. Vineet Patni, to do the honors. Mr. Patni is the president of the Indus Entrepreneurs, TIE, Pune, and is also on the boards of TIE, Global Healthcare SIG, and other organizations. Mr. Patni has vast experience across the banking and insurance sectors across India, Africa, and the Middle East, besides being an impact investor in multiple startups. Over to you, Mr. Patni.
Thank you so much, Naresh. It's an honor and privilege to introduce Ms. Elizabeth Vasquez. I think her achievements are phenomenal. Ms. Elizabeth Vasquez is the CEO and co-founder of WeConnect International, a global network that connects women-owned businesses to qualified buyers around the world. She is a world leader in women's economic empowerment and global supplier diversity and inclusion. As the head of WeConnect International, Ms. Vasquez is responsible for mission, delivery, and measurable impact. WeConnect International identifies, educates, registers, and certifies women business enterprises that are at least 51% owned, managed, and controlled by one or more women, and then connects them with member buyers. I think it's a fantastic initiative. The WeConnect International, the We community, supports and promotes women-owned businesses based in over 120 countries. I think it's almost every part of the world. Ms. Vasquez is a co-author of the book, Buying for Impact. I look forward, I haven't read it, but I'm certainly going to go ahead and pick the book and read How to Buy from Women and Change Our World. She sits on several boards of directors, including Georgetown University, Harvard University, MIT, Oxford University, Tufts University, University of Johannesburg, University of Ottawa, and more. She's also the recipient of 2018 Fletcher Women Leadership Award for outstanding graduates who are making a meaningful impact in the world. I can go on and on, but I think it's an honor, pleasure, and privilege for us to have you today in the RISE Summit and release the value, sustainable, and talk a little more about it. And I know this is Washington and this is midnight for you. So thank you so much for joining today. Thank you.
Dear Dr. Shiva, Mr. Putney, Dr. Bedi, Ms. Ratna, Ms. Rajkoli, and our other guest experts and friends, namaste from Washington, D.C. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is an honor to join you today to focus on sustainability, the S in RISE. As the CEO and co-founder of WeConnect International, I am thrilled we are partnering with the RISE Infinity Foundation for the 9th RISE World Summit. And I'm very pleased to see the release of the RISE value. Our lives have changed radically as a result of the pandemic, but as dramatic as the impact of COVID has been, it has not eclipsed other critical issues, including the need to shape a more sustainable and inclusive world. I would argue that the pandemic has actually forced us to all think really hard about what we value most, what we care about, how we want to spend our time and our resources. I want us to imagine a world where women have the same opportunities as men to design and implement sustainable business solutions that create sustainable prosperity in our communities. WeConnect International supports this vision by identifying growth-oriented women-owned businesses that want to compete for opportunities with the large organizations we work with that want to buy from these women-owned businesses. And these organizations are looking for innovation and solutions to problems. We serve inspiring and resilient women business owners based across India and 130 other countries. And we have a vision of a world where everyone has equal opportunities to contribute and to benefit. But we're not there yet. We're not even close. Even though 1/3 of all private businesses in the world are owned by women, it's hard to believe that in 2022, women-owned businesses still win less than 1% of all the money that corporations and governments spend on products and services. That's just 1% for the 30%. Women's economic empowerment needs a long-term vision to make sustainability impact a reality. It requires collective action like what we're doing today amongst policymakers, business leaders, civil society, and of course, the women themselves front and center, working side by side with all of those who value equality. Promoting supplier diversity and inclusion is not just the right thing to do. It actually makes good business sense. Increasingly, women are driving more sustainable economies and innovating as business leaders and owners of companies and as employees and as consumers. And neither governments nor corporations can afford to ignore this critical social and economic driver. Women account for more than $20 trillion in spend every year, and they're involved in at least 80% of all consumer purchasing decisions. It is time to rise, and we are not moving fast enough, but we can get there if we work together. In fact, we urgently need to work together to accelerate and scale the progress towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, including SDG 5 for gender equality, if we want to deliver on our sustainability commitments by 2030. Progress towards SDG 5 can only be made with intentional and visible actions from senior leaders like all of you, who move us beyond public statements and towards impact by spending our money with women suppliers who can win business and if given an equal opportunity to compete. For too long, we have talked about diversity and inclusion only to fail to move beyond the workforce. We need to drive inclusion throughout our value chains. How we spend our money actually says a lot about what we value. And to do this, to ensure that we're all leveraging our purchasing power to be more inclusive and more sustainable, to create the world and the communities that we want. Studies show that women are unique in the way they reinvest the majority of their income back into their families and communities so that everyone benefits. According to McKinsey, advancing women's equality, including their economic participation, could add $12 trillion to the global growth by 2025. Reaching an equal number of women-owned businesses as male-owned businesses, for example, in Singapore could add $95 billion, or an additional 20% of the GDP. Businesses owned by women in India are likely to witness a 90% growth in the next 5 years if we all work together in support of inclusion and equal opportunity. In my experience, women who own businesses, they develop models that are based on the need to do no harm to others or to the planet. And we need a lot more of these businesses to start and grow if we want to achieve our collective ESG goals. Given the urgent need to rise up and move towards global sustainability, we must be very careful and purposeful with how we spend our time and money to ensure that the women of the world are empowered to deliver the sustainable solutions we so desperately need in this brave new world of ours. Thank you again to the RISE World Summit organizers and participants for your commitment to RISE in support of collective impact.
Thank you so much, Ms. Vasquez. We really are grateful to you. I think it's nearing midnight at your place, and truly it says a lot about your commitment and your support for the RISE Summit. It's an honor to have you with us. And indeed, you had some very interesting points that you made, and I loved what you said about intentional, visible actions towards sustainable impact, and that's true. And from senior leaders at that, I think that's very, very true. And the point that you made is so critical. I mean, it's there staring at us in the face, making women at the center of our move towards sustainability and sustainable impact. I think that's a lesson for all of us to learn and, truly acknowledge the work that WeConnect is doing in that regard. So thank you once again for being with us and for releasing the sustainable value. We now move to the last, and in today's world, a very critical value, the E value, standing for eco-friendly. And to release the E value, we have none other than Ms. Ravina Raj Kohli, a personality who has spanned the pillars of journalism, advertising, and television and radio broadcasting like Colossus throughout her eventful career. To introduce Ms. Kohli, may I invite IDOBRO board member, Mr. Walter Vieira. Mr. Vieira is the president of the Marketing Advisory Services Group and the former chairman, International Council of Management Consulting Institutes, one of India's most popular marketing one of India's most gurus and authors. Mr. Behar, if you could mute it.
Yes.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, he's one of India's most popular marketing gurus and author. He's also now an advisor and trustee to multiple NGOs. Over to you, Mr. Behar. Mr. Behar, you need to unmute, please.
Ravina Raj Kohli is an international media veteran. Is a star maker in the news and entertainment industry. She has 35 years of formidable experience in television and radio broadcasting, advertising and journalism, and was the first woman CEO of Indian television. Creating impact and influencing change is Ravina's forte. Earlier, president of the Star News and chief executive officer of Channel 9, is one of the prominent media personalities of India. She was appointed as the president of Star News Channel to transition its break from NDTV. Before that, Australian media tycoon Cherie Blair chose her to head Channel 9 in India. Prior to Channel 9, Ravina was Senior Vice President Programming and Marketing for Sony Entertainment Television. After her return from Singapore as Executive Creative Director of CR and Grey Advertising. Very impressive background, Ravina, and we're all looking forward to hearing you.
Thank you very, very much for that introduction, Walter. I deeply appreciate your kind thoughts and words, everyone, and for inviting me here. And I'm very pleased to release the RISE value, eco-friendly or ecosystem-friendly. I'm going to take you through a little story that might probably elucidate what I mean by ecosystem-friendly and eco-friendly are actually the same thing. Ecosystems are systems that serve the ecosystem, and the ecosystem of change to help ecosystems is what I'm going to be talking about. One of the greatest levelers we have seen in the last 2 years has been the air we breathe. I'm talking about a global pandemic called air pollution. Air pollution has been one of the most neglected, least spoken about, most uninteresting parts of the conversation to do with global warming, climate change, and the need to address measures to move from a graying planet to a greener planet. In 2016, Delhi woke up, and as we all know, Delhi is one of the most polluted cities in the world. We have unbreathable air in India, of course, in over 122 cities, but Delhi probably shoots ahead of the charts in an alarming manner in the sense that you can't even measure the kind of toxins that we breathe. Delhi's state of affairs in 2016, nothing short of a health emergency. We were breathing air from close proximity, thermal power plants. We were conducting public sports events in toxic air where studies were showing that children were developing breathing problems. Athletes were having cardiac arrests. Data published was not being published. Rampant construction and urban expansion was leading to the creation of dust and felling of trees, destroying wetlands, destroying and encroaching upon forests, was leaving the poorest of the poor without food, shelter, sustainable lifestyle. Corporate profit was creating inequities in an alarming manner that was all coming back in a cycle, leading to horrific emissions, air pollution, and nobody was really talking about it. When Jailam asked about who are we missing, I think the fight to bring air pollution to the forefront really pinpoints who we are missing. We are missing women, we are missing children, and we are missing outdoor workers. We are missing the most underserved, and we are missing the most affected. The conversation around ecosystems and eco-friendly change has been conducted primarily at a level that does not include the people who conserve the most, which is the people who are the most unprivileged and the people who need to save and conserve and preserve. Air pollution in 2018, in figures released by the WHO, was creating 7 million premature deaths. Children were born and are still being born with smokers' lungs. Women in developing countries are falling sick and suffering horrific pollution-related health issues because of indoor biomass cooking. These are just some of the things that sort of are all the causes for this air pollution issue. But what is the ecosystem that is working to create this? That is the same ecosystem that needs to work to prevent it. And that currently is, there is a lot of pushback and a lot of resistance to it. I'll just try and elucidate this. All governments and legal systems currently give priority to polluters, in the sense industry that creates the biggest toxic, say, fumes or emissions in water are getting away with minor penalties, and the public seeks no accountability, neither does the media. The legal systems today, especially in India, make it absolutely impossible for a poor man or a poor woman, possibly the only breadwinner in the family, who is poisoned because of proximity or toxic emissions in the workplace, to seek any form of personal compensation to keep his or her family alive. Children are studying without any conscious thought the consequences of climate and the planet and sustainability and the environment, the curriculum, the syllabus that is put out there for children in schools, possibly conveniently overlooks what needs to be addressed urgently, where children have to be brought up with a sense of environmentality. That is a problem with the kind of education that is being imparted, where priority is really not given and connections are not being made and the circles are not being closed in what they learn and what they need to become as professionals and thought leaders as they grow up and come into the whole ecosystem of change. The climate conversations, especially in India, have remained very, very elitist in the sense that they happen in the English language. They have not included multiple languages and multiple vocabularies that need to evolve and conversations that need to evolve at various levels. India is not a country that speaks English. That's a very, very, very small percentage of the population. But the conversations and the representation of voices from people who speak other languages is absolutely critically and miserably minimal. And that needs to change on an urgent priority basis. For corporates and corporate people, chasing sustainable development goals, I'm talking about India, the priority has been other things apart from the public health impacts of climate change due to their own work or their own corporate decisions or their own corporate strategies. And last but not least, and possibly horrifically the most important, is that the media has had no agenda. And the media has had no vocabulary, and the media has no training in telling these stories. And that has happened because money and sponsorship and advertising does not support networks in India putting any form of resource into the training and reporting of these serious public concerns. So in 2016, a few of us got together and said the missing piece in this whole story of air pollution, and none of us really knew much about the science and about what was really going on. We just said, we can't breathe in Delhi. So we got together literally, overnight and started to become the voice of the public. The missing piece was the citizen. And I'm pleased to say that in the last 6 years, almost 6 years since the My Right to Breathe movement began, which is really an ecosystem of change that we are trying to bring about in the country and spread this in the world. The ecosystem of change is completely pushed and led now by citizens. The conversations around climate change and air pollution and the whole impact of it was led primarily by scientists. There were experts with a lot of knowledge. There were researchers. There were governments who were being made representations to, who were turning deaf ears. So there was absolutely no inclusion in the matter. There was no diversity of thought. There was no innovation. There was absolutely no conscious behavior that was going into any decision-making processes. But very recently, I would say, state governments and the central government have started to take cognizance of the fact that air pollution is a big issue in the world. We've had sporadic sort of reactions in the world before. Mexico in the 90s, China in 2016, England, London, the Great Smog in the 50s. What air pollution has not managed to do is make people aware that this impacts everyone. So we have issues that, like in the whole world, where things like pollution racism exist, where developed nations are dumping their waste in undergrounds while claiming to pursue sustainable development, etc., etc. I don't want to go into a big blame game, but the ecosystem of stakeholders in climate change, the change in what is the air that we breathe, in working towards conversations for a greener planet, necessarily now include more than just policymakers, more than just scientists and research, and definitely more than just governments. They include lawyers, lawmakers, they include public health officials, they include doctors, they include the media, very importantly. They include women and children and outdoor workers, the people most affected by it. And of course, corporates need to start listening. Corporates need to start listening. Nobody wants to object to development, but this environment versus development debate, that has been the one thing that has squeezed eco-friendly behavior, eco-friendly decisions, and eco-friendly ecosystems, has to start coexisting. We have to develop with responsibility, with inclusion, with diversity, with innovation, and complete conscious environmentality. One of the big problems, and Kiran mentioned this earlier on, is accountability. And until there is accountability from governance and policy and corporates and law and medicine and pharma to saying that air pollution is the silent global crisis in climate change. It kills ecosystem, it kills wetlands, it kills people, it kills sustainable working habits. It is a real issue. It has to be addressed, and nothing can happen without all stakeholders coming into an ecosystem to sort of make the change in our eco-friendly ecosystems, so to speak. I mean, in the economies of the world, in our change in our behavior. Intention, time-bound goals, accountability. Without these three factors, nothing will change an ecosystem. With that, I would like to end here. I don't want to take much of your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kohli. I think you brought out this value of eco-friendly and ecosystem actually so beautifully, so succinctly, just taking up the one cause of air pollution. And I think what you very well established is accountability that needs to encompass the entire ecosystem around this topic. and going beyond lip service. I think you brought it out beautifully, and thank you for sharing your thoughts out here. So ladies and gentlemen, these were our 4 wonderful speakers, our leaders who released the 4 RISE values: responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and eco-friendly. And may I now request, yes, we would like all our speakers to, we'll have a group photograph with the speakers, please.
Oh.
I said, instead of cheese, we say RISE.
Right.
Thank you. And now may I ask our 4 presenters, Mr. Bhattacharya, Mr. Vinod Menon, Mr. Vineet Patni, and Mr. Walter Vieira as well to join us so that we can have a group picture. Can we spotlight them, please? Is Mr. Bhattacharya with us? And Mr. Vinod Menon? Yes. Mr. Vinod Menon, Professor Menon. Okay, I think he's. So we can rise again.
Thank you so much.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. Kiran, we'd like to say something.
No, just a very quick thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful beginning to this awesome summit that we're all looking forward to. You know, a question to all of you. You know, have you heard the term MANELs? M-A-N-E-L. You know, that's really, you know, what you normally get to see in any global summit. You know, they call it panels, but more often than not, there are only men on the panel. Now, if you notice something which has happened here today, all our 4 panelists, all our 4 leaders were amazing, dynamic women. And I believe that's probably the first time in the world that an open, non-gender-based global summit has actually had an all-women panel. And what's more, we have had 4 stellar male leaders actually introducing them. So this is something, you know, we managed to put together. And I think it's just a small token of what we at RISE try to do. And you'll find examples of this through these 3 days. We try to actually walk the talk as much as possible. So I once again would like to thank all our speakers today. Amazing thoughts being shared. And I think this has set the kind of stage for the discussions and collaborations and deliberations rather that will happen over the next 3 days. At this juncture, I must, actually it is my bounden duty to thank our board members and our incredible steering council without whose amazing support this summit would not have been possible. Yeah, thank you so much.